Okay, it says I'm live, so I'm going to believe that I am until somebody tells me differently. Let me know if you guys are out there. Let me know if the volume. I don't have a mirror, so when I see myself, I have to go, oh, man, something's going on. Anyway, let me know if the audio and the video are okay. Hey, everybody, my name is Michael Bunker. This is the Bunker Nation Show. I'm glad to be here. I'm here for you. I'm going to be your host for the evening. Got some things we're going to talk about, but of course, as always, we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So just pile in here, push in, come on into the room, push in, no social distancing, no mask needed, no hand sanitizer, just push on in here. Get into the comment section and type in and tell me where you are. Hello, Russ in Ohio. Hello, Mary in Smoky, Oregon. You guys do tell me if the audio and the video are okay, because sometimes I sit here and talk for long periods of time not knowing that the microphone is turned off or something of that nature. A little bit hot here today. You guys are used to me doing shows when it's 104 degrees and it's about maybe in the 80s today, but the humidity is really, really high. We've had about 8.5 inches in the last 7 or 8 days. Hello, Hava. Thank you. Thank you, Pat, too. Audio and video are good. All right. Ethan, good to see you. Bob, all right. And Fredericksburg, my buddy. Hope to get down there and see you real soon. All right, everybody, come on in. Type where you are. Let me know how everything's going. Got some things we're going to talk about. There's things going on. And, of course, like I said, we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. But the very first thing we got to do, if I can remember how to do it, is we got to do the box thing. All right, that means it's an official show. And you guys are here and you're part of it. And you can type into the comment section questions and comments. Don't wait till you see me floundering or foundering, however you're supposed to say it. Don't wait till I've run out of things to say. I know you guys know that I can carry this thing for 3 or 4 hours. I know you know that I can do that, but I don't want to. So if you type in questions when you think of them, I can always come back to them if I'm in the middle of something. All right, everybody. So it's 9/12. It's the day after the 9/11 memorial. And like I said, the weather's been great here. It's been beautiful. Had a ton of rain, still a lot of mud, a lot of humidity, but we appreciate the 60-degree mornings. I've been up since 3:15. You guys, I used to always tell you I wake up at 3:35, but I don't wake up at 3:35 anymore because my wife's here now, and we wake up at 3:15 because she needs a little more time to get ready, and she has to be at work at 6:30. 3 days a week, so we get to the gym a little earlier. Does that sound crazy? So I've been up since 3:15. Had a couple of naps, so I'm feeling okay. Had a little bit of hammock time. If you guys are out there, let me know. Say hi. Hit the like button. You guys have been a little bit soft on the like button lately. Also, we want comments in the comment section after the show's over. So today's 9/12. Yesterday was 9/11. A lot of people online on Facebook, elsewhere, talking about where they were on 9/11. And I got on Facebook and I said, I don't know if I've ever told my story on here or on Facebook as to what my 9/11 story. So it requires a little background. At the time, I was a traveling speaker. I had quit my job working for a Fortune 250 company as a sales rep, repping medical and transcription type of equipment, office equipment. And had quit my job and didn't know what I was going to do. Had started meeting with a group in Lubbock, Texas called a warehouse. And part of what we did there, the thing was started as a ministry to extremists. Put it that way. There was some instability at the time. It was a big time of militia movement and all that kind of stuff. And some of the brothers thought that maybe some of these militia types were a little bit unstable in their gospel understanding. And so they had started a group that not only informed people on things that were going on in the day and those kind of things, but also tried to provide a gospel message of stability and tried to calm down some of the more extreme elements. I started going at the request of somebody who went to church with me, And I started speaking there, basically just talking about the news. And I started teaching the gospel out of the, teaching the Gospel of John. And I started getting requests to go out and speak. And at the time, I hadn't really even heard about Y2K, but Y2K was starting to build up. And so it got kind of popular, and I was traveling quite a bit around the country. Those of you who know me know that I was not a big Y2K guy, but I did take the opportunity to teach about preparedness and survival, those type of things, teaching people to be stable, be able to stabilize their area, evangelize and stabilize, that sort of thing. And so at that time around, Y2K had come and gone, and I was still speaking all over the country on a lot of things. I talked about government surveillance long before anybody ever heard of the guys who are famous for it now. And a lot of other things. But at the same time, I was trying to still be a stabilizing force, trying to, I'm a nonviolent person, trying to teach people a little bit about nonviolence. I'm not a pacifist, but I'm not violent either. And so I spoke to anybody that would listen to me. I spoke to militia groups. I spoke to anti-militia groups. I spoke to just, you name it. I was traveling around the country and around the world, ended up going to Australia, Central South America, all over the place. And because of who I was willing to speak to, I was probably on a list. I know that I was, because anywhere I flew a lot back then. Anywhere I went, and this was before 9/11, I was picked out to go through enhanced questioning and searches. Let's just say that. I'm sorry you're having bandwidth issues, Daniel. Glad to have you here. Glad to see you here, Russ. And so, although things can happen, and let me explain what I mean by that. Some of you might be watching the Cobra Kai. It's a perfect example without any spoilers. It's a wonderful setup, because if you ever watched the original Karate Kid, you had Johnny, who was kind of the bad guy, the villain, and his sensei, who was the villain, and then you had the good guy, Daniel LaRusso and Miyagi and all that. And with Cobra Kai, you kind of see things from a different point of view, that perhaps you're the villain in somebody else's story. And so I understand how, because I was willing to travel and speak to groups that I maybe had very little or nothing in common with, I could make my way onto a list. And although if anybody was sit down and talk to me, I'm a reasonable person, willing to discuss issues at length. The sheriff had been out once, but the reason I brought up the Cobra Kai thing was that things happened on occasion that I had no control over. In Cobra Kai, his brother, there's no spoilers. His brother goes over and like beats up Johnny's car. Just, he had no control over it. Daniel didn't know it happened, but it looks bad. Things happen that look bad for Daniel. Daniel comes across looking as a bully, as maybe perhaps he was the real bully all along. And so those sort of things happen. We had a guy that was staying with us who was of the sovereign mentality. He believed that he was a sovereign citizen and all this kind of stuff. And although I didn't see eye to eye to him on a lot of things, and I told him what would happen to him if he tried to insist on a lot of this silliness, he got pulled over one time down south of Lubbock, and he gave him some driver's license he had gotten from the Kingdom of Heaven or something, some nonsense. Nothing I had anything to do with, nothing I would have supported. And so it got into the whole system, and the sheriff came out and wanted to know what I had to do with some cult, the Kingdom of Heaven and all this kind of stuff, which I had nothing to do with. This guy was just staying with me. And so, things like that happen. There were things that I can see. I have the ability, because I have empathy. I'm a reasonable person. I can see how other people, looking at the information they have, could come to a conclusion that's not accurate. And so I knew I was on a list. Like I said, I was traveling around the country and talking to unsavory characters. And I had a meal with Randy Weaver. You name it back then, I knew who they were. I talked to the guy who was the head of the militia Montana several times. Had nothing in common with them. Had no philosophical alignments with any of them. But I understand how those things happen. So I knew I was on a list. 9/11 happens. I was asleep when the first plane hit. My wife was up. We had small children at the time. And she was up and she saw it on the news, and she came in there and woke me up, and she said a plane just hit the World Trade Center. And I immediately thought, some type of air traffic control problem or something like that. I don't know. So I got dressed and I went in there, and I was watching it when the second plane hit. And I had a friend at the time who was there at a warehouse, and I called him and I said, "What do you think's going on?" He was a pilot. And he said, it looks like maybe an air traffic control problem or something like that, but we don't know. And then it started coming out that it was, I was not working for him. Just because somebody pays you does not mean you work for. I was a private individual being paid to speak on occasion. Anyway, Daniel, I'm in the middle of a story. So it starts coming out that this was likely a terrorist attack. And so, you start thinking about things. You start thinking about, who is this? Who's doing this? I had been in New York City 6 months earlier, stood at the base of the World Trade Center Tower number 2, filming as a tourist. Like I said, things can look bad. I was a tourist, and I actually have the video of me standing underneath World Trade Center Tower number 2, looking up. And being a student of history, I said on the video, this was the tower that was blown in 1993. And so in my mind, I've got these things going on. Like, who did this? What's going on? I don't know. I don't understand what's happening. But I had a suspicion that we might get a visit. And so there was a lot of rumors going around at the time. And we had some people staying with us. And I said, whatever happens, I'm not going to jail today. So if they're just picking people up and like hauling them in to take them to Guantanamo or whatever, Guantanamo existed, but as we know, the term today wasn't a thing. I was not going to go to jail that day. Let's just put it that way. I'm nonviolent, but it would have taken a few people. If they decided to come pick me up, I was just going to say, listen, you want to pick me up tomorrow or the next day or whatever. Next week, I'll come in and we can have a cup of coffee or whatever, but I'm just not going. I'm not going anywhere today. A little while later, maybe an hour later, a young man who was staying with us come running over there. He was on the internet, and he came running over to my house, which was right across the way. And he said, the sheriff is down at the end of the driveway, parked at the end of the driveway. And so I was like, all right, here we go. We're watching it. I'm as concerned as everybody else. I have the same emotions going on as everybody else. I'm wondering what happened. I haven't been involved in anything illegal, not done anything. Well, I'm not going to say I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't do anything illegal attached in any way attached to this situation. And so, he just stayed down there at the end of the driveway for a while. I figured he had a list, and it probably wasn't very big, of people you just keep an eye on to see if anything's going on, to see if there was activity. And hey, thank you, Darren. Appreciate it, bud. My good buddy, Darren. One of these days, I'm going to talk to you. So anyways, I just kind of stayed there, and he kind of stayed there at the end of the day. We had a long driveway. And then at some point, I guess he thought nothing's going on. He had other things to do, and he went to go check out somebody else. And that was it. That was my 9/11 story. A couple of days after 9/11, I did a talk on video, a intelligence briefing for a warehouse. Having studied all of the issues and what was going on, I was convinced that America was going to go to war, and that the plan would extend beyond having anything to do with the people who perpetrated 9/11. And so I did a talk, and in that briefing, I said that America would go into Afghanistan, sometime later Iraq, and then Syria, and probably Iran, in that order. Guess what happened? Another time I've been right. And a lot of people that are out here right now have watched those videos, and that's exactly what happened. Doesn't have anything to do with anything. I had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that I have been calling things right for a very, very long time. And Daniel can tell you that on some of those tours where I was talking, I speculated in 1999 and 2000 that there would be a terrorist attack, most likely in a major U.S. city, probably LA or New York, on a major structure, and it would be blamed on Osama bin Laden. And I did that talk 400 times, probably all over the country. And so I can understand. I understand. So now I understand Johnny in Cobra Kai, and I understand Daniel LaRussa, and I understand how sometimes people have information about you, or they think things about you, or they get information or intelligence about you, and it could lead them to a conclusion that's not particularly accurate. So even today, here's 5-6 months after the beginning of COVID, where I've been telling people exactly what's going to happen months in advance, including the violence that almost certainly is going to happen at the time of the election. And I told you all exactly it muted itself, but now I'm back on. All right. So, hair is horrible. All right. So one thing I try to do with you all guys all the time is I try to give you thinking lessons. It's back on. I appreciate you guys telling me that the audio was out, but it's back on now. And so I teach on logic fallacies. You guys, if you go back through my videos, we've talked about quite a few of them. And if you continue to watch this show, we will go through all of the major logic fallacies, and I will teach you how to think about them. I'll teach you how to identify them and how to utilize your knowledge of them in discussions and debates, etc. One of the other things I try to do, and I did it just a few weeks ago, where I taught you about what's called the Gish Gallop, which is a method in argumentation where the Gish Galloper will throw a whole lot of stuff out in just a very long spew of sentences and try to overwhelm you with garbage that you can't pull apart, and it makes it too difficult to deal with it all, and they use that as a way to divert. I used to call this the Octopus Theory, where the octopus would just spray ink and then disappear. But I actually found out there's a real name for that, and it's called the Gish Gallop. And I've been teaching about the Gish Gallop for a long time. I used to call this also the Forbes West method. And I don't know if Forbes is watching this right now, but he uses this method a lot. And we used to be on a podcast together. And he would do this. If you were in a debate and you asked a specific question or made a specific point, hello, Sandy, he would throw out about 47 things, most of them absolute nonsense or non sequiturs, who had nothing to do, and a couple of fallacies in there as well. And usually what happens is you give up. It's just too much. You can't sit there and go, okay, there's so much here. So related to the Gish Gallop, which I already taught you about, there's already a video. Just put in YouTube, put Michael Bunker, and then put Gish Gallop, Gish. Today we're going to talk about the Brin Bundling. This is a name that I came up with. I've looked around and I've not found another name for it. And so I'm calling it Brin Bundling after the sci-fi writer, I guess he's a sci-fi writer, David Brin, who is a nutcase, however successful he's been at writing, who utilizes a tactic which I'm going to describe, which is actually quite popular today, and another one that Forbes West used quite often. And I'm going to teach you how to identify it and also how to deal with it when it comes up. So the topic is called Brin Bundling. What David Brin does is a method that kind of marries or mashes together things like straw man arguments. Let me see, I wrote it down here. Stereotyping, and with a dash of the Gish Gallop as well. And so what the Brin Bundler will do is they create a character. When we talk about things like ad hominem attacks, where they attack the speaker or the debater rather than deal with the topics, what the Brin Bundler does is they create a fictional character based on any number of means and methods. And then they cast all the attributes of the fictional character on you. And so what they'll do is they create a fictional character. And I'm going to give you some for examples before I get to David Brin. For example, I live in the South. I live on a farm. I deal with cattle. Some people might say on occasion I have a Texas accent. I am born and raised in the South. And so I'm also educated. I am erudite. I'm well-versed in things like literature, Russian literature, history. I am here in front of you today without Google, without using Wikipedia, asking the audience to talk to me and ask me questions. And I do so without a staff, without any help, without a cameraman, without a lighting guy, without anybody who's doing research other than me. And so you might say that I'm pretty good at this, that I have the ability to speak, and that I can go into educated circles, and I've had people like Princeton educated theologians debate me and lose. And so at the same time, I'm from the South. And so what Forbes West will do is he's created this character. You might call him Joe Dirt, maybe a Joe Dirt neo-Confederate, toothless, trailer living hate monger who burns crosses in people's yards. So he takes all of these attributes that have nothing to do with me or anything to do with me at all, and he creates a character, and then he just talks to you as if you're that character. And no matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how intelligent you are, you try to analyze actual topics, that's the only character he talks to. And so whenever he answers you, he responds with, well, I don't know what things are like there where you marry your sister and you keep goats there in case your sister's on vacation or whatever. And so there's these attributes that are given to you that are not yours, that have nothing to do with you. And the more they can build this character, and they use the same character for everybody. So Forbes he's a good friend of mine. We're one of my best friends. He's a communist, a Marxist. Anybody to the right of Joe Biden, he thinks Joe Biden is too conservative. So Joe Biden to him is a toothless, Dukes of Hazzard character. And so, this is what they do. And David Brin does the same thing. He's created a character, a neo-Confederate character out of anybody that's to the right of Kamala Harris. And every single one of them is all for part grabbing and rape, and just think of anything you can think, any attribute that has been wrongly mythologically or even correctly attributed to Donald Trump, or anything, any myth, any fiction, any stereotype, anything like that, and they gather these together into a character. The character exists in the ether, and all of these things become composites. So the Brin bundling is to take all these composites and to continue to add to them. So when a news story comes out, that's later on going to be debunked about Donald Trump saying that veterans were cowards and losers, or whatever that fictional story was. That now becomes absolute hallowed truth. And everybody who is to the right of Kamala Harris believes that and supports it. So you put that into your fictional composite character. And then you have Nicholas Sandman, the guy who was minding his own business, and a guy started drumming a drum in his face, and he happened to have a MAGA hat on, and the media created a character about this guy that didn't exist, and they ended up having to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in defamation. Regardless of the fact that it was defamation, all of those characteristics are assumed to be true, and they go into your composite character. So everybody you meet who's to the right of Kamala Harris is also a guy who goes and confronts indigenous people and insults them and grins in their faces. And so it goes every day. Every day there's a new outrage. Every day there's a new accusation. Every day the Russians are plotting to get in there and do this and that. And so every one of you, because I assume that most of you out there are probably, even if it's a quarter of an inch, you're to the right of Kamala Harris, you are also a Russian asset. So this is what happens. This is Brin Bundling. You add to it his next tactic, which has nothing to do with Brin Bundling, is to say, now bet me that I can prove all this or whatever. And he uses gish galloping to throw so many things out there that most people are like, what? This guy's insane. This guy's deranged. There's no way you could ever unravel the Gordian knot of his insane rambling. No way. No matter who you are, even if you're not a Republican like me, there's no way. And so when somebody who has money, who finally steps up like Larry Correa did, and actually meets his challenge and says, yes, I'll bet you X amount of money and we're going to put it in escrow and we're going to have rules and judges who are not connected to either one of us. And then Brin crawfishes and escapes out of it, just like Forbes West did when we had the podcast. The only thing you can do is you got to try to pin them down on one topic. And the best way to do that is to know the name of the tactic they're using and how it works and be able to describe that to the audience. So if someone uses a gish gallop, and remember, gish galloping is merely throwing a billion things out there, a billion things, and running them all together and then acting like you won, even though it would take a monumental effort to try to unravel all of it. And so when this happens, you stop and you go, what you've just done is called a gish gallop. You can look it up on Wikipedia. You've thrown a million things out there with no support, including numerous fallacies that would be impossible for anybody in the time given to unravel. And so what we want to do is we want to pick out one thing that you said, and we're going to take a look at that thing, and then we're going to take it apart, and we're going to use rules of debate or rules of discussion and civility. And then you take that one apart. And once you've taken that one apart, of course, they're not going to stick around for this because they know that you are forensically taking them apart. Once you've done that, at least for the audience's sake, then they realize the tactic. Once the audience knows that the person you're debating with or discussing is using a Jesuitical tactic, they lose because they're dishonest. So all you have to do, you don't have to go through a compendious argument of non sequiturs and try to handle every one of them, because that's what they want you to try to do. What you do is you point out and name the tactic that they're doing. If they use that's why I teach you logic fallacies. If they use a logic fallacy, then you name it. Now, maybe a week or so ago, I taught you a fallacy. I'm going to try to remember which one it was. Somebody, if you can remember which one the most recent one was, it's just escaped my mind. Tu quoque. Is that it? Tu quoque? Or anyways, name the fallacy. Tell the audience how the fallacy works. And then that person will start crawfishing. What Forbes West does when I point out a fallacy is he scoffs and he says that everything is a fallacy to you. Everything's a fallacy. No, I'm identifying that fallacy according to the rules, and you can go look them up. If he feels like if he can say everything's a fallacy and that's all you're doing is shouting fallacy, it's true, because that's all you do is spew fallacies. And what I do is take them apart. I analyze them according to the rules, and we find out if that's what you're doing. Once the audience knows that you're doing something on purpose, they lose any respect for the other person, and they lose. That person loses. I would ask this Forbes West dude, why is neo-Confederate taboo but not Marxism, considering the Marxist Soviet history of Gulag? You would ask that, and you would run into a gish gallop followed by Brin Bundling. In other words, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if the Marxists killed 100 million in just over 30 years. He doesn't care. What he'll do is say your numbers are wrong. He'll throw a meme up that shows Hitler coming up with the numbers to accuse Stalin about. And then finally, if you pin him down like I did on a podcast, he'll settle for 20 million. That Stalin and the Marxists killed 20 million and not 60 million. That the Ukrainians starved because they were stupid. But Stalin killed 20 million. And then I asked him if 20 million is more than 6 million. And he immediately defaulted to, if you ever bring up the fact that 20 million is more than 6 million, you are a Holocaust denier. So the problem with thinking that you have this figured out just because you know something like the history of Marxism and the history of those murders, that doesn't work with these people. They already know what you're going to say. You have to be able to point out the tactic that they're using so that they lose credibility. Here's the thing that a lot of you don't get and what you need to learn. People that do this all day, every day, if they're any good, they already know what you're going to say. They've already been in this argument a million times. They're trolls. That's what they do. When somebody comes to your door and they're pushing some religion, some different religion, if they're any good, they already know what questions you're going to ask. They know if they come to the door and they're of a particular religion that got everything wrong, and they predicted the Lord was going to return in 1913 and again in 1924 and again in 1936 and again in 1977 and again in 1988, and they got them all wrong, they should know that you're going to bring that up, and they should have a response to it. Your job is to know what they're doing and how they're doing it and to point that out. All right? Unhappily, most people who debate on the internet today, they don't know what they're talking about. And they think they're clever and they think they're smart. And so they sit back there and they argue with their own people. They sit there and they go back and forth and they talk about what they would say if they were ever in the fire, if they were ever in the debate. They never go, debates never go like you think they're going to go, unless you know what you're doing, unless you've been in them a lot. Just having information and pointing out information is no good today anymore, because everybody out there has a keyboard and everybody out there has Wikipedia and everybody out there has IMDb and everybody out there. And the information on those sites are wrong. So you bring something up and they just go, oh, well, that's a myth. I pointed out the fact that the Inquisition existed in a debate. 60 million people, probably up to 100 million people were killed in the various Inquisitions perpetrated by the Roman Catholic Church. They already have an answer. Don't think you're clever. It's called the Black Myth. The Inquisition was made up, according to them, by Protestants in order to disparage the Catholic Church. Every one of you has existed through the Catholic pedophile priest thing. You've lived through it. You've watched it on TV. You've seen people arrested. You know what happened. I guarantee you, in less than 10 years, when this generation passes and another generation comes along, or 20 years, that will have never happened. They will say it never happened and that it was blown out of proportion and it was one or two bad apples. It wasn't a systemic problem. I'm not bringing this up to attack the Catholic Church. I'm just saying, if you think you're going to be able to debate somebody just because you have information and you don't know tactics, you're not going to get very far. Yes, everybody gently caress the like and the thumbs up button. Likes are how YouTube lets other people see these videos. Subscribes are really, really the gold mine. So if you go to YouTube and you subscribe, you can find my channel at youtube.com/bunkdad, or just go to YouTube and they have a search engine and type in Michael Bunker and you're going to find it. And then hit the subscribe button. Right next to it, there's a little bell icon. And if you click that, they'll give you notifications of when I'm going to be on the air live. And every one of you can get on here. Like I said, I don't have a staff. I don't have research assistants. I don't have anybody doing any work for me. And you can type in a question, and most likely, if I can, I will answer it for you. I wanted to take a few moments here to my friends who are in California, including Forbes West. Oregon, Washington, Montana, and other places where the fires are burning. I want you to know my heart's with you. My prayers are with you. I absolutely hate that this is happening. I myself, only 2 weeks ago, was had fear and trepidation that we were going to have fires because we hadn't had rain in 90 days, and it was very, very dry, and there were fires in the area. And so I know, I don't know what you're going through right now with the smoke and with the size and the scope of these fires, but I am praying for you all. And I hope everybody here is like-minded, that regardless of what you think of who's starting them and why they're starting and God's judgment and everything else, there are people out there who are like you and me, who are suffering, having to breathe in toxic smoke and all those things. And I really, really hope that we're all in the same mind, that we don't hope bad things happen to people. All right, y'all, if you got questions or comments, last couple of things about Brin Bundling is that when you identify what somebody is doing, when you see that they are characterizing you as a comic book character that they've created in their head. This happens in comment sections all over America every day. There is the stereotypical Trump voter. There's a stereotypical Obama voter. This thing happened just as much during the Obama administration, where innocent missteps like 57 states and things like that were blown up into things that they weren't. And then those attributes were attached to everybody who happened to support the president. And so I just want to, first of all, warn you not to use that tactic because it's dishonest. And if somebody's any good at this, they're going to call you out on it. But secondly, notice it, identify it, call it by its name, attribute it to me if you can. But even if you don't, once you do that, you're way ahead at winning your discussion. All right, so if anybody has questions or comments, I wanted to tell you all that I've got a fundraiser going on. The fundraisers are going to allow me to expand the show to more platforms, perhaps put it on a podcast on wherever podcasts are done. We're looking at getting some batteries. For most of you who may not know, I live completely off grid. I'm at my office where we have a small, tiny amount of solar power. I have charged this light, I've charged this fan, and I've charged a battery that's running the laptop and the internet. And that's all. Once I leave here, I go up to the cottage. We don't use any grid power, electricity, or utilities. And so what we're trying to do is expand our power down here with batteries so that we don't have to. I've gone about 4 or 5 days without doing a show because it's been raining for 4 or 5 days and muddy, and I wasn't able to do a show because I didn't have any power in the batteries. So wanted to do a show last night and not able to do it. All right, so Daniel asked me about priority of reading books. Just for those of you who are regulars, I've mentioned several books like Lenin in Zurich. I think I mentioned Solzhenitsyn's book, For the Good of the Cause, Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Absolute must reading is the Gulag Archipelago, even if you only read the first volume, which is fine. My book, which is out right now, which is called God in the Storm. You can find it at godinthestorm.com or find it on amazon.com, which is a telling of the Cambodian genocide and escape from it by a family and friend of mine, co-writer Sean Tuin and his family. And it parallels the Khmer Rouge with Antifa. So you definitely want to get that book. Go to amazon.com. Just type in Michael Bunker or God in the Storm and you'll find it. So Daniel asked me, what is the priority as far as reading these books? I would definitely recommend that people read Gulag Archipelago. It's difficult reading because it's not only harrowing as to what was going on at the time in the gulags in Russia, but it's very parallel and it talks about the Russian Revolution. It's a very long book, so get yourself a copy of God in the Storm and read it during your breaks of reading Gulag Archipelago. I would also read August 1917 by Solzhenitsyn. Day in Life of Ivan Denisovich is a quick and easy read. You can read it during your lunch break, perhaps. In fact, today I was rereading For the Good of the Cause. I'm going to be doing a review of that book maybe in the next couple of days. So that would be kind of my priority list as far as those books. There's a lot of other books you probably should be reading, but those are some good ones as far as understanding the times and understanding the advent or attempted advent of revolution for communism and Marxism, etc., etc. All right, so I'm here looking for your questions and comments, and I'm not seeing any. And I understand that I'm entertaining, and that sometimes perhaps my charismatic ability to hold an audience in the palm of my hand keeps you from unleashing yourself and using the keyboard to type in questions, but you're just going to have to break away. If not, the show's going to be over. We're at 40 minutes already. This list of books is not on my website. I have put it out several times on Facebook, but I will, if I can think about it tomorrow. Here's what I need you to do. If you're on YouTube, go to YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, go to YouTube. After this show is over, don't do it during the show. After this show is over, go to YouTube, type in Michael Bunker, find this show, find this episode of this show, go into the comments section and type, hey, I love the show. Make a list, Michael Bunker. Give us a book list of things we should be reading, especially R.E., The Advent of Communism, the early stages of revolution, and I will put together a list. I will see your comment, and I will put together a list and remember to put it on YouTube in the comments section. The other thing you'll be doing is you'll be helping this show out a lot, because YouTube decides who is going to get to see this show, who's going to get it's recommended to by how many comments it gets, not during the show, but after the show. You have to do it after the show. Yes, but do I know about horses? Bob perfectly feeds me into my next topic. Today, I started my horsey lessons. I've been a cattleman for 20 years. I own cattle. I own a lot of cattle, longhorn, pure longhorn cattle, not the longhorns you see at the University of Texas, which are longhorns, or the fake longhorns you see in people's front pastures with 7-foot longhorns. I have pure longhorns, pure, authentic, historically correct longhorns. There are only about 4,500 of them in the world, and only about 70 herd sires in the world. And I have a herd here, and I've had them, just the longhorns, for about 15 years. However, I've never been a horseman. I've ridden a horse poorly, but I don't really know anything about riding horses. The fact that only 6 months ago, I weighed 278 pounds, and I was morbidly obese, and if I got on a horse, I would kill it, probably kept me from riding before now. But now that I'm a lithe and lean, slender, shredded, less than 190 pounds probably, means I can get up on a horse. And I got up on a horse today. I'm not going to tell you I rode it. My daughter Sarah, who's the one that's teaching me, led me around like I was a small child on a little pony, which will be coming out in a video very soon. We took video of it. But I'm starting my lessons. Like I said, I've ridden horses before. I'm not a total newbie, but I don't know anything about riding horses. I don't know anything about horses other than we own them. And I've had horses here for some time. My whole point in actually learning to ride the horses was that we have vehicle problems, and we live in self-perpetuated poverty. And so my cars would break down, or I wouldn't have gas. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could ride a horse? So I told my daughter, I asked her, would she teach me? And so you'll be getting some of that, and there's going to be some videos coming out on this channel. Subscribe to my channel, and you'll get to see them. Do not let the horse think you're giving him any control. I am not well known for letting anybody think that I'm giving them control. Not national governments, not ecclesiastical magistrates, not local magistrates, not anybody, not my wife, not anybody. And she will validate that I am not well known other than the God of heaven. I don't generally let anybody think they're in control unless they're an expert, and I recognize them as an expert, and I submit myself to their tutelage in that way. And that horse is not an expert on riding horses. Until I see that horse ride a horse, I'm not going to consult the horse on the rules of riding it. I will be in charge. That doesn't mean he's not going to throw me off or whatever. I don't know. I think I'm a little bit more likely to fall without breaking in half or splatting than I was when I was 278 pounds. All right, y'all, we're at 44 minutes. If you got a question or comment, you got about a minute and a half to get it in here. Today I'm drinking with no sponsorship or in any way being recompensed. Soleil caffeine sparkling water. That's what I'm doing. It's got caffeine in it. Today, I started a 14-day mini cut diet. I've been doing a lean bulk for a couple of months. Actually, since I hit the bottom of my weight loss, which was about 176 pounds, I have purposely been eating at a surplus so that I could put on weight and muscle as I work out, and had crawled my way up to about 186 when I got food poisoning and lost 10 pounds in one day. And so it's taken me a month to a month and a half to not just crawl back to 186, but to get up over 190. And so what I'm doing is a mini cut, which is I'm just going to be losing some body fat over the next 14 days, hopefully no muscle. We'll see how that works out. I'm doing a video of all of the 14-day event that I'll be putting on my fitness channel, Bunk Fit, which you can find on YouTube. All right, y'all, I'm not seeing any questions and comments. I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Lord willing, I'll be back. If not tomorrow, then maybe the next day. But I come back every day or two and do a live on here. My mouth stopped working. But I love you. I appreciate you. I'll see you again soon when I see you.